So here in Honkai Star Rail, you gotta forget everything that you know or assume about free-to-play units in other gacha games. Here in Honkai Star Rail, those free 4-star units are extremely useful, especially units like Herta, where not only can you get the unit free-to-play, you can also get duplicates of said unit free-to-play as well. So let's talk about what exactly Herta brings to the team, right? So first things first, she's Ice Elemental type, so her attacks do ice damage, obviously. And when it comes to all ice attacks in this game, when you trigger a weakness break with ice damage, not only does it do additional ice damage, it can also freeze the target. So this basically acts like a stun, and it really comes in handy on tougher encounters where like every single turn counts and you need to really kind of stall out to stabilize your team a bit. Freeze is very handy with that. Now, Herta follows the path of erotism, so what this means is that she is an AOE beast. And of course, as you guys know, when it comes to farming stages, those stages tend to be filled with waves and waves of multiple enemies, so having a character that can quickly AOE these enemies down is the best way to farm as efficiently as possible. However, with all that being said, just because you're an effective AOE unit doesn't necessarily mean that you are a top tier farmer. You're gonna have to have that little extra, and that extra is follow-up attacks. So the most important aspect of Herta is her star talent called Fine, I'll Do It Myself. This is the time to twirl. This gives her that meme queen status. And basically what this does, it's an AOE attack that triggers every single time your ally or Herta, who's also an ally, causes an enemy to fall 50% or lower.
Time to twirl! What are you looking at?
So the whole idea to make this talent as effective as possible is to pair Herta up with really strong single target heroes that can really easily drop enemies' HP down to 50% or lower, which then triggers Herta's AOE follow-up attack. So what you'll see me do most often, instead of like trying to finish off a low HP enemy, I'll instead attack another enemy that's not quite down to 50% yet, attack that enemy, get them down to 50% or lower, which then triggers Herta's AOE, and then just constantly do that over and over and over. Let Herta finish off the low HP enemies and constantly use your single target hero to just continually trigger her over and over and over again.
Don't listen. Savor the vigor of it. Time to twirl! Time to Mickey up! Time to twirl! Time to twirl!
Now, clearly, as you guys can see, a talent like this that can be constantly triggered over and over and over multiple different times a turn is extremely important when you want to clear out farming stages as fast as possible, and this skill can get even better with duplicates. Now, outside of that, her basic attack obviously is basic and just does ice damage, and free to play will be able to unlock her bonus effect, which grants even more damage when enemies hit that pivotal 50% HP mark. Now, getting back to her AOE side, her skill does ice damage to all enemies in an AOE. Inversely, however, this does more damage when the enemy is healthy. So if the enemy is at 50% or higher HP, this does more damage. And then on the flip side, her other abilities do more damage as the enemy is at 50% or lower. So once again, this character is really good no matter what situation you're in, and with one exception, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Now, her ultimate is very straightforward. This is just a big, massive ice damage AOE that once at E6 will grant her next attack a 25% attack damage bonus.
Ever see a diamond this big? It's all yours! Time to twirl!
And then lastly, her overworld technique gives Herta a 40% attack increase for the next 3 turns.
Upgrade configured. Seize the moment.
Now, early on, your best bet for light cones is Birth of Self. This plays perfectly with Herta's follow-up skills. This is why her face is on it. So this increases her damage of follow-up attacks and grants her even more damage when enemies are 50% or below. So you can kind of start seeing this theme, right? Like, Herta is the type of character, if you love those heroes that are all about finishing off low HP enemies, this is that character in an AOE. Now, when we talk about relics early on, there aren't that many options, so I would recommend the Thief of the Shooting Meteor. Since Herta Herta's gonna be doing tons of AOE, tons of follow-up attacks. She's constantly gonna be hitting enemies. Having that higher break percentage is pivotal. And as I mentioned at the start of this, not only is Herta free to play, you also get additional copies of her as you complete the simulated universe. A few key levels here is E1. This is called Kick When You're Down. So this allows her basic attacks to do more damage at 50% HP or less. So this helps Herta out quite a bit on single target boss fights where she's considerably less useful since her ability to like spin to win is greatly lessened. At her E2, every single time her talent is triggered, once again, this is where your ally makes an enemy go down to 50% or less HP, aka time to twirl. So every single time it's time to twirl, this is gonna increase her crit rate. E4 makes her time to twirl do even more damage when triggered. And then lastly at E6, No One Can Betray Me, which gives her next attack after casting an ultimate, a 25% damage boost. So in summary, Herta's an easy character to recommend. I mean, firstly, she's free to play, you get free dupes of her, we're all gonna need effective farming units, and the ease of being able to trigger Herta's follow-up attacks makes her a top pick when it comes to stage farming. And when I say farming, at least in the context of this game, that means more than just good old-fashioned resource grinds. It also definitely applies to simulated universe, like literally Herta's little play area. There's an entire path of elation that's all about follow-up attacks. Tons of buffs that make follow-up attacks more and more powerful throughout simulated universe. You're constantly gonna be fighting groups of enemies in this gameplay mode, so she's a top tier pick there as well. Now with all of that being said, if you will excuse me, it's time to twirl.
Let's be friends. Do you know who I am? This big diamond! It's all yours! Time to twirl! Nap time. Time for mischief! Time to twirl! Time to twirl! Welcome, customers! Do you know who I am? This big diamond! It's all yours! Time to twirl! Naughty child. Time to twirl! You can still surrender! Time to twirl! Yeah! Do you know who I am? This big diamond! It's all yours! Time to twirl! Yeah! Let's be friends. Yeah! Time for a shot. Now.